Hi, I'm Tony. Welcome to Sports Bike Shop's review of the Airoh Commander 2 helmet. Most adventure helmets sit somewhere on a scale from off-road helmet with a visor grafted on up to road lid with a peak added. Often the MX lids with a visor aren't great on the road, and the road lids with peaks are far from ideal on the dirt. This Airoh Commander 2 is different. It's possibly the best I've tried for finding the balance between road and dirt performance. Right, let's run through the essentials and also what I found when I wore this helmet out on the road as well as on dirt. The shell is made from a composite fibres, including carbon, and the complete helmet weighs in on our scales at 1,540 grams for this size medium. That's not heavy at all, but if weight is a really big thing for you, then an extra 100 quid gets you a Commander 2 Carbon. That has a purely carbon fibre shell, and it weighs 1,457 grams on our scale, so that's about an 80 gram saving. I wore this straight Commander 2 for this video, and I didn't find weight to be an issue while I was riding at all. The shell has a very dirt-inspired shape, with the chin bar pointing downward, a bit like a raptor's beak. That can make a helmet unstable when you put it on a flat surface, but there's a flat section at the back of the Commander 2 that keeps it stable when you put it down. As an adventure helmet, it's obviously got a peak. My experience of this depended really on the bike I was riding. I wore this helmet on two bikes, a Suzuki V-Strom 1050 and also a V-Strom 800 DE. The 1050 had a relatively tall touring screen, and the air tipping off that screen would make the peak creak and groan a little bit in the wind flow. It wasn't as noticeable as on some other adventure lids I've reviewed, and the noise didn't bother me at all, but it was there. On the 800 DE, which has a stumpier screen, I've had no issues at all with noises from the peak because the air tipping off that screen then hits the helmet in a different place. I didn't get any aches or pains from wearing this helmet for an hour or so at a time on either of those bikes, so I would say that shows it cuts through the air pretty well. And on noise, hopefully the fact it changes with the bike shows that there's no way for one person to be anything like definitive about whether a helmet is noisy or not. If you do find noise or aero to be an issue, you can run the Commander 2 peakless, which is known as urban or street mode. You prise out some covers, remove 3 screws, and then you can push 3 rubber bungs into the mounting holes to block those off. I found street mode worked very well when I tried this helmet in that. It cuts through the air better, it quietens down a little bit, and also it feels lighter. But a quick tip, I found it impossible to push the blanking bungs in until I gave them a dribble of something like GT85 to ease their passage into those holes. Ventilation on this helmet comes firstly at the chin, and this one proved excellent for me. On the V-Strom 1050 with its taller screen, the airflow of that just wasn't quite enough on its own to keep my specs from misting in damp conditions, but it was absolutely superb behind the 800 DE's shorter screen, giving me a very refreshing flow of air into the lid. There's a foam filter in there, which is easy to take out if you really want to get your tash flapping. Up top, there are 2 vents at the back end of these inlet scoops. I found these to be pretty good as well, but I did also find them to be a little bit awkward to reach while I was riding. Okay, let's move on to the visor. From fully open, you get 2 intermediate positions, then there's a cracked position that gives a very small gap for air, and then pushing it down firmly locks it into place. Pushing the small button under the visor unlocks it, and then it goes into the cracked position again and then can be raised from there. I found that unlock button a bit fiddly, but I mostly wore winter gloves, and that will affect dexterity for things like that. Once I'd released it, I found that cracked position a bit on the small side really, but it just about allowed enough air to keep my specs clear of mist. And then the next step up in its travel was too much of a gap for riding at speeds much above 30 miles an hour, I found. But the visor does sit quite securely in its intermediate steps, so if you like riding with the visor up a bit, then you should be okay with that. Now, all of these bits of feedback are from using the Commander 2 with the chin curtain fitted. It comes in the box, and I did most of my riding in this lid in February and March when I definitely wanted less draft inside the helmet. With that taken out, I think all of these misting issues would disappear completely. The visor, it's protected against mist by a Pinlock 120 XLT. The XLT bit stands for extra light transmittance. I found its performance to be excellent, and it still gave me plenty of peripheral vision. Adventure helmets are often among the best for peripheral vision, and that is the case with this helmet as well, as it's very, very strong on that score. Changing the visor is relatively simple, but it requires tools and the ability to not lose small screws and washers as well. There's a sun visor on this helmet, which lifts and lowers on a switch on the left rim. I liked the tint level and also the amount of drop. On some adventure helmets, there's quite a steep curve out to the sides that lets a lot of light through, but I didn't find that with this one. Airoh don't say whether this sun visor is coated to protect against fog, but I had no issues, and I rode in conditions where I think it would have misted without a coating. Now, this being an adventure helmet, you can run without the visor and you can use goggles instead. There are inserts in the box that will replace the mounting plates for the visor if you want to use those plates. That was a bit too fiddly for my tastes, so I just left the visor base plates in place, and then my goggles fitted perfectly over the top anyway. I wore my biggest Oakley goggles, which have got an integrated nose guard, and they fitted nicely into this helmet. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to do loads of dirt riding, but I did try out some unclassified county roads near Sports Bike Shops HQ, and the lid goggle combination worked very, very well. Okay, let's go inside. The fully removable liner is comfortable for me. It's billed as ASN, that's Airoh Sliding Net, and Airoh claim that has a structure that helps reduce impact forces. Hopefully it'd help if I needed it to, but I couldn't feel any difference between this and a regular lining. Still, it's comfy, so that's a good thing. There's no mention from Airoh of glasses compatibility. I can get my specs in here pretty well. It is possibly slightly fiddly, but they do go in without much trouble. And then the last thing on the inside, the strap fastener, is a D-ring arrangement, which fits with the sporty off-road styling. Now, onto intercom compatibility. The Commander 2 is prepared for an intercom that Airoh haven't released yet. There are speaker recesses inside the helmet. There's a delve on the inside of the chin bar for a microphone, and then also a slot on the left side of the shell for an intercom unit, which is covered by a rubber blanking plug. If you don't want to wait for the Airoh system, or if you know you won't want one even when it becomes available, it might be tricky to fit a universal system to this helmet. I found the speaker recesses a little bit small, and I couldn't get either Cardo or Sena's 40mm speakers to slot into those. A pair of 32mm speakers easily fit, and this might sound a bit perverse, but a pair of Cardo's 45mm speakers also sit in there quite nicely. They sit straight, but they do end up protruding past the recess, so you'll need room between your ears and the lid for that to work. As for the control unit, I was surprised to find I could fit a Cardo Pactal clamp mount in behind the switch for the sun visor. The unit won't sit perfectly flush to the shell if you do that, but I think it's a better option than sticking on with a self-adhesive pad. If you do it that way, the curve of the comms unit won't match the shell's profile. With Sena's mounts for units like the 50 and 30 series, I think you will need the self-adhesive mount. Again, it won't be perfect, but I think it will be okay. Whichever system you use, it will sit a bit further back than you might like, but that might also keep it out of the wind and make for a quieter ride. Right, it's time for sizing, approvals and pricing. Here in the UK, the Airoh Commander 2 is available in sizes from small up to triple extra large. There are 3 shell sizes. Helmet size small goes in the smallest of those shells. The next shell up covers medium and large helmet sizes, and then the biggest covers helmet sizes from extra large and up. I found sizing to be consistent with the vast majority of helmets. I wore a medium, as I do in virtually everything. My head measures 59 centimetres around, so in theory I should wear a large, and I should wear a large in virtually every helmet on the market by that measure, but I don't, which shows that measuring around your head is only ever the starting point when it comes to sizing a helmet correctly. As for internal shape, this is something some people want me to cover. My head shape is closest to round because it's as broad as it is long, and I found this helmet very comfortable. Now, I don't think that means this helmet is round on the inside. I suspect it will suit a lot of different heads, and I think it's always worth trying to see if the comfort suits you. Approvals. The Commander 2 is approved to ECE 2206 for the road, and it's also ACU Gold approved for use in racing and on tracks. That ACU approval is probably most relevant to off-road events or possibly supermoto racing. There's no star rating from the UK government's Sharp Impact Testing Programme as we record this. If a rating is published, then we'll add it to the description below. Prices then. In plain colours, the Commander 2 has a list price of £349.99 as we record this. If you go for a graphic, that goes up to £374.99. There's also the carbon fibre version that I mentioned earlier. If you want the 80 gram weight saving or the aesthetics of carbon fibre, then the Commander 2 Carbon is £449.99. We're also told that a version of this helmet with a polycarbonate shell is on the way. So if £350 is too big a stretch in terms of money, watch this space, as we're expecting that helmet to come in at around 200 quid. Okay, let's sum this up. You've probably already read between the lines and picked up that I've been very impressed with this helmet. It gives everything that I want an adventure helmet to give without delivering too many of the compromises that often come with this style of lid. It's light, the aero is good, ventilation works well, the visor gives great peripheral vision, and the sun visor is deep enough and dark enough as well. It's not perfect. The visor unlock is fiddly, especially in thicker gloves, and the cracked position for that visor is too small for my tastes. Suitability for an intercom, if you're looking at this as a potential long-distance touring helmet, isn't ideal either. I also had a slight noise issue behind the screen of the V-Strom 1050, but it was relatively minor, and putting the lid in street mode would alleviate that. That's one other thing though, it's not a lid where I'd want to be removing the peak and the visor very often, as it involves tools and also little bits that can easily be lost. Thankfully it's easy to run this helmet with goggles in and the visor still fitted but raised, so that saves the need to change modes as often. But honestly, these are all pretty minor downsides to what I have found to be an excellent helmet. It does a hell of a lot of things absolutely right. There are several new adventure helmets landing this year, so I've been busy trying as many of those as I can, and this is one of the best new options for a competitive price as well. I hope that tells you everything you wanted to know about the Airoh Commander 2, but if there is anything you'd like to ask or to add, then please pop a comment below. Thanks for watching.